G with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and yes, we are continuing our discussion using the day of prompt. Today is the day of elemental water. We're delving into our fourth and maybe strangest and greatest yet the lubricant that allows the other classic elemental forces to come together. And during our discussions talking about elemental earth, air, and fire, now with on this day of water, we're going to bring it all together and, of course, come up with plenty of prompts, ideas for you to steal and whatnot. But please take time to gather your thoughts, top off on that mental fuel, and we will be right in it in just a moment, right past the intro. Thank you very much. Just as abruptly as the intro stops, so too is it possible that the player characters are thrown into the deep end of the pool in the aquatic realm. Of course, we're going to talk about some mechanical features that might uh, be present when we're talking about traveling in aquatic kingdoms and why it is that, it's not the most popular. I think it's I think it's the element that draws us closest to it because as human beings, we are intrinsically tied to aquatic regions. We love being near and around waterfalls, rivers, lakes, pools, oceans, and such. Yet in a gaming sphere, we don't often see it, and we're going to talk about that as well. Let me take a look at our co-hosts here, who are, of course, in the chat. Yeah, uh, I hope this will be pretty interesting. Um, yeah, is splash of cold water exactly. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Um, let's get the problematic issues out the way right up front. That way we can do all positive stuff towards because I fall positive. So one of the reasons why I believe that we have such a draw towards the aquatic realms when it comes to fantasy, imagination, even we see this in artwork. We often see not just castles and fantasy realms, but they are of course near coastlines and the even scientifically in many ways, we have delved less into our own oceans than we have explored out into the outer realms of the void of space. And I remember watching a show with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was talking about the fact that if you were a giant and held the Earth in your hand, it would feel as smooth as a cue ball because the lowest portion of the earth down in the Marianas Trench, like 4 to 6 miles or something, and the highest mountain is so narrow compared to the size of the earth that if you rubbed your hand on it, it would just feel like a cue ball. And it does make us wonder, like even our own oceans, despite the fact that it's 70%, the earth is 70% covered by water on our own surface, even that is a small part. Even our own oceans are very tiny compared to the actual mass of the planet. And when we think of an underwater kingdom like a moon like Europa or something, even it has an ocean, even though it's a small moon, larger than the entire ocean that we have on Earth. And so it is a lot of mystery. How many maps have we seen with here here there be dragons or something or krakens or whatever drawn in the corners because it's just such a mysterious place to be. And yes, the End King brings up an oldie but goodie, and I think there's I want to call it second edition, but I'm probably incorrect in calling it second edition. I believe it was a re-release and redo of this game. Anyway, the End King says there's an RPG called Blue Planet, and its premise makes me think of the sci-fi equivalent of the Water Plane. Yes, the Blue Planet RPG. Let's see if I can find it. Um, is a it's a sci-fi setting, rules all on its own, and the RPG is based on the fact that Earth is destroyed or horrible, and everyone has to go to this other place to live, and that planet just happens to be aquatic, and it's an entire culture built around it. It's got its own rules. Uh, Biohazard Games. Let's see. Yep, Biohazard Games. I'll send this out. So I think one of the reasons why we have such problems with using um, uh, underwater environments of any type for any reason in role playing games is that it's always a there's always a fight against the one off, meaning that it requires near infinite adjudication when using the rules. So, for example, fifth edition has a basic rule about underwater environment. Every game system has some form of maybe a drowning suffocation rule and then how to navigate in water. And usually that rule tends to be pretty limiting, meaning like it doesn't take into account a lot of different things. And I can just start naming half a dozen, dozens of situations where we all might start scratching our head and going like, maybe certain things don't work the way we think they should work underwater. So, for example, fantasy gaming, can you cast a fireball underwater? What if you create a floating disc spell or a tiny hut spell? How about healing? How about verbalizing in any manner? And then I haven't even brought up the idea of water breathing versus air bubbles, using electricity. Does a lightning bolt become a fireball? Which is kind of like I think what's probably happened. Like would it electrify an area rather than a ranged kind of thing? And then we have to think about three dimensionality, buoyancy. Are there certain character types or races or encumbrance that would make you either float, uh, um, rise to the surface, go to the bottom, or stay buoyant in place? And then what about movement? And there's so many other things that can happen. Hey, is there falling prone underwater? What about being disarmed? Would you, if you're disarmed with your sword, does it just fall, hundreds of meters to the bottom of the ocean or something? So there's all these other elements that bring about the issue of being underwater, despite the fact that our brains are there's something primal, I believe, in us that just wants us to go like, yeah, I still want to do it. Man, the squad says, how many ways are there of doing an adventure on the plane of water without the um, constant use of water breathing spells? I think there's some ways to get around it. So yes, we have the classic um take a concoction, now you can breathe with water. And mind you, it could be a blessing from an aquatic spirit. It could be, you can come up with a number of MacGuffins, especially on the day of elemental water. It's an excuse for us to insert this into our games. This day of could be like a festival of sorts where pearl divers of all sorts come together on a coastline, and specifically on this day, if you are brave enough, you can dive into the deep and travel to this under aquatic realm or something, right? And it gives the players 24 hours, and I'm using 24 hours as just a generalization of being able to go into this kingdom. Now, it could be that on the day of, humanity has been able to go there. Some people may not have come back, so it could last indefinitely if you prefer to have something like that. But I like the idea of a resource of sorts. There's a very old anime, very early anime called Marine Boy, and he had sticks of gum. And Marine Boy was like this, real cool kid, but he's like, hyper expert, and would chew this gum and chew the gum, and he could breathe water, and he'd have to have another stick of gum. So there could be something like that. There could also be a vehicle, animals, things like that, like maybe a starfish over the face, or a jellyfish that has an air bubble in it that fits over the head like a helmet of sorts, or even a larger jellyfish that players could swim up inside of. So it's air inside of it, but the jellyfish swims very slowly, or whatever. The starfish with a little proboscis going down the person's throat would look kind of strange. Like what is it, Starro? There's an image of a comic book villain, Starro, face hugger. Um, and there's like weird images of the Starro face huggers. Oh well, that there we go. There's a good one. And would look a little bit odd on a player character's face, but again, maybe, just maybe, this might be kind of cool to use as a method of getting your player characters to go from one place to another. Yeah, Star Wars a little bit of a, it's like a giant monster with alien monster kind of thing going on. Maybe not having a big eyeball in the middle would probably make it look less. No, I don't think it would make it look any less bizarre. Um, but anyway, there's also the idea of like having, maybe the player characters must swallow a particular living creature or something that that allows the player characters to breathe, and it lasts there. And at the end of it, when they come to an air-filled realm, they have to like throw it up or something, and it could be benign, but whatever. When a heathen says, very often water levels in video games are hated, and in TTRPGs, nobody wants to get on the boat. I find this disappointing since I love to explore a fantasy aquatic setting. I agree, and water is the great equalizer, right? Like, just imagine this very simple, complete setup that actually is probably pretty common in fantasy role playing games. All right, player characters, you're in a subterranean realm. You're in the basement of a castle. You're in a dungeon. There's steps leading down. 3 steps down, you see the water level. And there's a dark passage. Now, at the end of that passage, there's dim light showing. And the PCs all look at each other like, my ass ain't swimming down into a water-filled dungeon, right? Like that. Sure, maybe waste-filled water in a sewer system is about as far as they go, but the rest of it, most player characters like, I'm not taking my armor off. I'm not putting a dagger in my mouth. I'm not doing none of that stuff. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Drew says, I actually like water levels in Mario and many other video games, but I'm usually very alone with that taste. And water levels, again, are a great equalizer, right? You're playing video games. Oftentimes, if the game has any kind of a timer for your character to be able to go through it. I remember there's a level in God of War where you had to find Neptune's helmet or trident or something like that to allow the character to breathe, because you had to swim so far that at a certain point you would die. You had to go find it and get it back. So yeah. The Ant King says, in D&D, certain classes or certain spells protect you from falling damage. Do those also protect you from damage of surfacing too quickly? And that's the thing, right? Are we going to include the bends? Also, with water, it's also like it has an attachment to gravity. So a heavy object may not fall very quickly in water, but it still has the same mass and density and weight. So a 5-ton block of stone, maybe the characters could swim out from underneath it if it falls into the water, maybe pushed off of a ship or something. I don't know, collapsing cliffside or whatever. But at the same time, you get trapped under there. It's pretty dangerous. So yeah, and then there's all kinds of water levels. Like, how do you adjudicate water levels around the ankles or calves versus your waist versus being maybe 30 feet or 10 meters underwater to 100 meters to 1,000 to to leagues underwater, and about water pressure. So the deeper you go, and are we going to include water pressure or whatever? Yeah. Drew says maybe on the day of water you do not have to go to the sea, but the sea comes to you. Tsunami. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and mind you, I'm a person that likes to have the option for players to dip their toe in the water, literally and figuratively, just a little bit. But if you're going to go with the plane of water, it's just like it's going to be completely like, here, put this on your face and go for it, right? That may be the issue. So also, anyway, you're fine with the tsunami thing, yeah. One Eye Heathen says, "What weapons would work best? How would Merfolk fight? Would Merfolk develop the same weapons we on the surface have, and how far would they go? Would they have underwater guns?" I believe, what's the fifth edition rule for underwater? Let's see, 5e D&D rules for underwater. Uh, ter, let's see. See if I can. Underwater swimming rules explained in 5th edition. You roll ranged weapon attacks with disadvantage underwater unless the weapon is a crossbow, net, dart, javelin, spear, trident, or other thrown weapon. Any creature fully immersed in water will resist fire damage. Underwater spell attacks roll as normal without disadvantage. Only weapon attacks get disadvantage. And it's pretty. I, I don't know. It's a little bit underwhelming, right? And then, of course, someone says, I'd go as far to say that the vast majority of the rules for underwater combat can be assumed by thinking logically about the situation. And unfortunately, the logic of thinking about it is rubs up against our fantasy of doing the thing. Uh-oh, I have a sneeze coming up. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Excuse me. Um, it says melee weapon attacks are at disadvantage, but see, I would have a problem with that. All right, let me share this. Uh, Let me come on. Let me share it. Share this out, and my issue with the adjudication for us as purveyors of fantasy is that you're really going to have like, my default is give and take. So I give a bonus, take a bonus, give a benefit, take one, so that it's not just a matter of like blasting the PCs with disadvantages, like, oh, you're underwater, you can't do anything, versus the idea of like, no, you there's some things you can do, some things you can't. Yeah. I don't know. I believe anything that's thrusting is probably going to be pretty. Um, I wouldn't put any disadvantages on things that are thin and thrusting. I think for weapons and things like that. Uh, when I Heathen says level 1 PCs could gain experience doing things like oyster diving, fishing, surfing, swimming, etc., and then move into underwater adventures as they level. Also, it's a good way to introduce the players to something, to those situations as well, right? Like, hey, how many times have we seen surfing in fantasy? But yes, oyster diving, the idea of like just being, the player character that's the sailor or the pirate, uh, uh, a coastal region where they have fishing. Maybe there's even a vacation spot with like a tropical place with a nice beach area. The End King says, if you're worried about a staro covering the player's character's entire face, maybe it could be internal, a bacteria that lives in the lungs that takes in water and converts it. Ooh, I like that. I hate it, but I like it. Yeah, the End King says, water is the great equalizer from me, and we're all slow when we're thigh deep in mud. Batman, The Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, that's what he's like, I'm, what is it? He said something like, I'm a surgeon, and, I can't remember the term. He said something about I'm a surgeon, and this is my operating table, and he like breaks the person's body, one of the mutant um, leaders or something in The Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, Drew says water dungeon could be done like a water palace in old Zelda games. Oh, Zelda's a great example of using things like that, where you had not to swim, but had to find ways to manage the water flow. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The various Zelda environmental traps kind of thing where you have to have keys and activate certain levers to remove water, but then you have to raise the water levels to swim into a particular place, to rise above to get to another level and things like that. Yeah. Shai says nitrogen narcosis, the perfect pretext for doing whippets at the gaming table. Oh, no, don't do that. Yes, but yes, do we want to go as far as the bends and pressure related deep diving? Maybe, maybe not. Although pressure is probably just as harmful at the center of the plane of Earth with heavy gravity and things like that. So maybe towards the air quote center of the plane of water if it's round, although it has been described. I have that pulled up. It's rather described like the plane of air. There really isn't a down. It's more psychological. I see, heathen. Yeah, I've got a cat that does the same thing. Monk subclass, Order of the Mantis Shrimp. They excel at punching underwater and turning the water itself into a superheated key blast. Yes, for those who don't know, there is a pound for pound, there is a mantis shrimp that can strike so hard and so fast for its body weight that it basically causes like a sonic boom underwater and such. Like it could penetrate the hard carapace of deep sea animals and such. Yeah, I yeah. It- um. Oh man, Hunt even mentions isn't going deaf a serious risk underwater? I um going deaf. What is it? The air bubbles to get into your bloodstream. There's a lot of things. Explosive, not decompression, but the when explosives go off underwater, they can cause a concussive force that's very dangerous and such. Yeah, I think we can make a monster off of it. I'm gonna find. Let me go find it. Please don't mantis. Let's see. The mantis shrimp animal. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see if we got this here. So the mantis shrimp. Let's see if we got some details. Lifespan only 3 to 6 years. Mantis shrimp punches crab's arm off. YouTube video. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's see what Wikipedia. Mantis shrimps are carnivorous marine crustaceans of the order of Stomatopoda. Stomapods branch off from other members of the class. Mm-mm-mm. People ask, how powerful is a mantis shrimp punch? These little animals kill by punching as hard and fast as a bullet from a gun. Find out why the little mantis shrimp is so tough. The mini weight boxing title of the animal world belongs to the mantis shrimp, a cigar sized crustacean with front claws that can deliver an explosive 60-mile-per-hour punch. And this is underwater. Make that human sized and even larger. Ooh. Yeah, don't roll for initiative. It already got it. Sorry. Oh no, he already hit you. But you didn't roll. I know. Yeah, the bends, yeah, if you go deep but don't take enough time to resurface. Yeah, now here's another thing about underwater adjudication, getting these problematic things that we'll get into our creative such is the fact of um attacks, spells, movement, talking about the merfolk and let's see if I can find your comment here again and place this up. Sorry. Um, One Eye Heathen mentions the fact of like which weapons work best. I think piercing weapons, but then what if someone has a magical hammer? Would you allow that to work normally? I probably would default to that. Um, you know, Aquatic sentience could fight dimensionally, so you could not only be surrounded on your waist level, but above you and below you as well. Um, would they develop the same weapons? Again, we know today what kinds of things work underwater: torpedoes, harpoons, tridents, nets, and cages, which would be pretty dangerous as well. A player character getting caught in a net or being trapped in a cage and having that cage drop to the bottom of an ocean or what have you, or in the plane of, as concerns the plane of water, you maybe fall towards drawn towards the plane of Earth. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, if you would prefer to have there to be a bottom at the ocean on a plane of water, you could do that as well. So those would be the difficulties. But I feel like if we challenge ourselves to get past the difficulties, we can have a lot of fun. So, for example, we talked yesterday about the plane of fire, and that what if the plane of fire is an energy source for creation, for ultimate creation unto itself? The plane of water may be the lubricant of sorts in terms of the ethereal plane, the astral plane, meaning that maybe the plane of water is like rivers and streams and aquifers and such that flows to other places. In other words, the plane of water is a type of natural natural nexus to get from one place to another. And it may be necessary for the players to go, okay, we're really going to have to deep dive because or move with the flow and things of that nature. And listen, underwater, we have things like warm water, tropical regions. Here, those of us in the States that like to go cruising, I'm a man of a certain age that likes to do that. Wife and I, we love to go cruising. And like potato chips, can't just do one. And we have been in that tropical water, and it's so pristine in the Caribbean and so warm. It's unbelievable. It does Photographs and videos don't do it justice. And but that's not the only thing. You have Arctic regions with ice flows and things like that. Dungeons inside of an iceberg is a great idea to have in your aquatic realms. And then there's also what kind of regions would you have underwater? Meaning, like, what kind of habitats? You could have um, like iceberg habitats. You could have tethered habitats. Maybe plant life grows from the surface and reaches up, and then the people turn or cultivate them into like balls or whatever in cities that are held down at the bottom of the ocean like a tether, so that if there's any undulations or earthquakes or something, the city still exists. Of course, we have the classic Atlantis domed cities of glass. For example, let me show you. Let me share this out with you guys. Yesterday, we talked about the city of brass, and what if there are these metallic cities that exist out in the outer realms? And I found this on, let's see if I can bring this up a little bit bigger. I found this on Reddit. Someone created, let me give credit to the person that created it. Posted by Sierra, Caeora, or Keora, 5 years ago, City of Glass from the elemental plane of water, and this person decided to create it. And there's a little map, and then right down here at the bottom right of this image is the side view. So there's like a domed glass city that's on top of or built into maybe ice or something of that nature. It could be rock, some kind of lapis lazuli or whatever. But anyway, even with this city with a big glass dome over it, you can see that there are very many water channels and bridges and things of that nature. It looks really kind of cool. City of Glass. It's the sigil of the elements, right? And this person described their creation as like, well, their creation from another book, The Vortex of Madness, chapter 5, The City of Glass, and talks about the fact that it could be the sigil of the elemental planes. And I really like that idea. Mm-mm-mm. So, while I don't particularly agree with stealing anything, it's great ideas to borrow from. All right, let's get back to our comments here. Mantis shrimp. Hell yeah, I never even heard of it before. I think I have a new favorite sea creature. Yeah, the mantis shrimp, like it punches at 60 miles an hour. That's crazy. The plane of water as the veins of the universe. I was thinking that, yes. Maybe because multiverse is very non-Euclidean, you could have characters get on a sailboat and travel from one place to another. There could be water flowing in one direction. So if you find a flow of water, it could snatch the PCs in one direction, one place to another, but be nearly impossible to swim backwards. The While I don't think the Ahsoka show for Star Wars was the best, I give it a 6.5, 7. I think it was good, but in it there were we have space whales, and there may be aquatic creatures that are just very neutral, or maybe even like more fall more towards the neutral good or chaotic good, where the PCs jump into their mouth, grab onto their skin, flow with them like a school of fish and whatnot to flow from one place to another. And it could be migratory or whatever for the player characters to travel across the universe in these rivers. And those rivers themselves, um, famous mythological rivers have existed in the multiverse. The river Styx being one of the the most common and dangerous ones, but we also have the river Leith, and there are many other rivers as well that travel to other places, and this could be in the air quotes excuse for players to who don't have planar travel but must ply the riverways. And it's possible that this could be an infinite loop, right? If you travel it, the 9 alignments could go all the way around the aligned outer realms of the multiverse. But to get there, you have to go to the plane of water to find the river that takes you to the lawful good plane, and then you can only travel maybe in one direction or something like that. Yeah, when he says like Leith, the river of forgetting. Yep, same thing as the river Styx. Although maybe one borrowed from the other historically. I don't know. Shai says, my favorite was the giant sponge, the perfect replacement for human beings in political office. Giant sponges. Oh man, there was a pretty silly flashback in the movie Elemental where the one of the a character has a family and they're all made of water, and of course he'd like to have a girlfriend who's fire, and he talks about the fact that he had a horror story when he was a kid and he just happened to touch a sponge and he got sucked into the sponge for hours. He's like, that's unfair. Yeah, mantis shrimp will kill everything else's ass underwater. It's only a matter of time. Forget evolving the crab, evolve to a mantis shrimp or get your teeth knocked out. I love it. Mantis shrimp gangs. Like, yeah, you see a mantis, you see a tiny little mantis shrimp come around, and you see like krakens and stuff like skittering backwards. Like, oh man, sure thing, boss. Anything you want, boss. Mantis shrimp was like, yeah, get away from me. Sure thing, boss. One-eyed heathen says, oh, I love the idea of a spherical glass city with inner levels. It can float in the middle of the ocean by way of magic. Absolutely. And of course, an excuse to have air, some air-filled realms. And um, w- we can decide what the elemental planes are. For example, we talked about the elemental plane of fire not being under anyone's control. There's no deity of it. It's just an energy source. The plane of water could just be, it's just a realm. And so getting other elements into the plane of water, it may not be antithesis, like there's no sentient thing trying to stop it. It could just be you need these glass dome cities or balls or tethered cities or iceberg cities and so on and so forth. Cities on the backs of crabs and turtles. Oh, any number of these things. A city inside the living membrane of a continent, city to continent sized um, jellyfish or something, and that fire and earth and such. Oh no, you it can come here, it can be brought here, or it can be found like lost treasure at the bottom of the plane of water. Like for example, if there is an up and down, maybe it's because the plane of water may not have a surface to it per se, but maybe the higher you go, the easier it is to find like pockets of air. There are, I think there's like a spider that uh, lives underwater or is able to live underwater by using its webs or its back or something like that, hairs on its back, to grab bubbles of air and use those bubbles of air to breathe underwater. And the same thing might be here, like um, gold and gemstones. No, we sell air down here. We trade that stuff, these little globules. And maybe unlike the physical world, maybe those globules of air, like a PC can actually swallow one and be able to breathe for like an hour or two. And they sell them in open markets and whatnot. Um, or maybe there's a certain type of water that has a different consistency to allow it to be consumed, like a food or whatever. It looks like a globule, soft bluish thing that you can just keep in a pouch and pull it out, whether you're swimming or you're in the air, and just suck it down. Yeah. Water plane as veins of multiverse. I love it. Like rivers, a weird transit system. Absolutely. And listen, it's not just useful for the player characters. There could be enemies that guard it, piracy on the open seas, and yet those rivers or flows go to different places, and depending on where it goes, it can have different effects. Like, for example, in the upper planes of goodness, it's very peaceful and tranquil. You start getting into the chaotic realms, and it's whirlpools and typhoons and uh, you know city-sized waves crashing over castles and things like that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could have a river system where the water, its qualities, and its creatures change with the alignment. Absolutely. So again, in the goodly regions, you have giant turtles where people just get on the back of the turtles and they have, they drink mint juleps and whatnot. Whereas, you can get far more devious and dangerous creatures from other realms. And monsters and things that we think of as land-based or air-based, reskin, repurpose, reflavor. Boom! Now they're aquatic creatures. You want aquatic griffins? Of course, they're aquatic griffins now. You just make it up, right? Humanoids, they have gills now. That's all you have to. That's all you really need to lead to it. And we don't need to be blue ocean style, right? We can have things like let's see, let's share this tab. It doesn't need to be blue ocean. We can have all kinds of things mixed in. Are there swamps and mires and why isn't it? Come on. Yes, share this out. Yep, there we go. So we can have muddy locations where it's just thick, like a Florida swamp, right? You can barely see through it, and it's overgrown. The earth plane, as water gets close to the earth plane, it doesn't just need to be hard rock and sheer cliff sides down into deep trenches. It could be muddy, filled with lots of living things like schools of fish and tropical fish, krakens, and plant life. Many, if not all, of the plants that we have in our world, fantasy worlds, could be aquatic as well. Deep roots and coral reefs and things of that nature. The tropical fish themselves come in so many bright colors and shapes. We can use that as a backdrop for maybe our sentient creatures. Could you imagine tigerfish merfolk and hammerhead shark merfolk and uh, uh, um, penguin merfolk and I don't, great white shark merfolk, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, Drew says the Ahsoka show was mostly set up for things to come down the stream. I think I know what their plan might have been for Balin. Not sure what they will do now that the actor died. I know. And here's what sucks. They set up a thing and didn't pay it off. That's what I hated about the show. They could have shown us through visual storytelling what it was, the purpose was, and then end the show so that we can discuss it for the next season, right? All we see is him standing on a statue looking out in the horizon. I'm just like, what the yeah, you're fine, Drew, because I got all squirrely myself. Yeah. Air globs could be made of different atmospheres for different creatures. Yeah, different air, maybe those little globules could be filled with air or water, or maybe they're little gifts of, dare I say, gifts of magic. So inside the air globule is a small little flame that only exists inside of it. Like it's an air bubble with a flame that's still active, and it allows maybe a PC to use their flame spells, but they have to use one of them as like a resource or whatever. Yeah, the evil realms use the veins as a sewer system, throwing their waste into it. I love it. Hey, I'm swimming through a yellow ocean. Everyone's like, don't taste it. What do you mean? Ew, it tastes like urine. And everyone's like, how do you know what urine tastes like? Well, I imagine that's what it would taste like. Watercolor is affected by plankton, so you could have like a purple or yellow ocean. Hell's yeah. Hell yeah. Um, yeah, going through the earth plane would be a swamp. Had an idea for a Viking themed merfolk. Yep. All these ideas are great. And the earth, the plane of fire. Maybe if you travel a particular direction as you get closer to fire, it becomes hot, boiling. Maybe there are steam vents. Hawaii, the islands of Hawaii are part of the Ring of Fire, and the Hawaiian Islands are actually growing over time because the you know um, continental shelves, and they move, and the grinding and the heat from the heat from the earth, and it rises up above, and blah blah blah. But we can absolutely have volcanic eruptions in the aquatic realm and really fear being boiled to death. Let's think about oozes underwater, which could be pretty dangerous. Do oozes float on a surface like a swamp? Do they erupt from the ground, bubbling towards the surface? What a great um, uh, environmental hazard for the players to be floating in the water, and they know there's some kind of eruption or whatever underneath them as one or more of these geysers or whatever vents or whatever opens up, and the things, whatever it is that's dangerous, starts bubbling up towards them, but they're in the middle of a heated battle, and the merfolk try to use their tridents to push, or they use their nets to try to push their enemies, so that the oozes, and you can name any kind of gelatinous ooze, pudding, or whatever floats up, heat bubbles, steam vents, whatever, lava starts bubbling up towards the enemy, and up, roll a die, 2 rounds. You're going to be caught right in the middle of it. You're like, oh shit, I gotta get out of the combat. Understand fifth edition is horrible for disengaging in combat. But again, the enemy themselves might go, I'm GTFO out of here because that volcano just erupted, and those heat vents are basic. Like, what is it? A dragon turtle is far more dangerous as a fireball than a surface fireball ever could be. When I Heathen says the plane of fire would have a red boiling river, lava vents, those snails with iron shells that live near volcanoes. Yes, there are. For those who don't know, there are actually snails that I guess cover or are covered with iron ore from the depths of the ocean, so that they are literally metallic living creatures that are able to compress themselves to survive the great heat that's down below. And then they also live off the plankton and things of that nature that are underwater, which Merfolk could very easily farm, be a fish farming for schools of fish. They can farm for like plankton and other aquatic plants that live on that are under the aquatic realm and such. So yeah, cities don't have to be orbs or enclosed. They could be tower like. So that they could lead from the bottom of a realm all the way up. Again, they could be um, like a coral reef. They could grow into different sectors of sorts. Yeah. Drew says, getting killed by a mantis shrimp or getting boiled by an underwater volcano? Neither. I take the boiled mantis shrimp. The boiled mantis shrimp. Yeah, it can kill me, but it also tastes really good. When I Heathen says we have atmospheric rivers in real life, so it makes me imagine going through the air plane via a river of vapor. That's possible too, right? Like you could go through the different, maybe the as I know I'm using the word lubricant, but the plane of water may be the safest, air quote safest way, eh, and that's relative, right? The safest way to go from plane to plane, like, oh, the plane of Earth, the only really way to get there is to fall through a waterfall that falls into like a subterranean realm that leads into these undersea oceans or whatever in the subterranean realm of the plane of Earth, or like you said, the rivers of water vapor in the sky. I mean, technically, clouds are water vapor. So as the plane of water gets close to the plane of air, that mixing of like ice and steam and vapor and such might be the best way to travel. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Iron snail plus merfolk plus oozes floating on the water equals liquid metal Terminator. Hell yeah. Pretty dangerous. Damn. Yeah. Oh, what if the plane of water went through itself? Maybe some massive whirlpool like Charybdis? Maybe there. I mean, we have to have whirlpools. We have to have tide surges. I mean, you got to have things like that in the water. Maybe there's debris. Here's a strange thing. Maybe there's debris that falls from other planes of existence, including the prime material plane, that falls upon um, into the plane of water and sinks to the bottom like lost treasures. And that's why people there are communities and people come to the plane of water, the aquatic realm, to find those things that have been lost. And those things lost don't need to be physical. Yes, treasure, gold, magic items, castles, but they could be ideas. They could be dreams, right? Depending on which plane of existence they come from. Um, Heck, it could be piles of the undead dumped into the plane of water, or what have you, that happens to flow here, only to be recovered or found or something like that. Yeah, Viking merfolk, that was basically the creature of the Black Lagoon. Yeah, I like that. I love your imagery here, Shice. And King said, plankton. What is a plankton would make great politicians too, as would barnacles. Yeah, yeah. Well, heck, also leeches. I think leeches would make great politicians. Oh man. Yep. So great. Um, but yeah, here we have some imagery that just wanted to show some uh where is the image? There we go. Show some imagery, underwater imagery that you can find easily out here in the greater interwebs. Use some of these as ideas. Now, a lot of this is very like our ocean idea, right? Like some of these images, and of course, the people who created these images, you can literally see a city on the bottom, and then you can see the sunlight coming from the top. But one issue is darkness. Every If you've ever seen deep sea divers and such, it's not all tropical. Hey, we're only, 10 seconds from the surface and swimming down here with booty shorts on, right? That seems to be a very common imagery when it comes to videos and things. Young lady swimming ahead with her booty shorts on. But there's also the idea that it's dark. Maybe your dark vision isn't supposed to be, useful down here because there is no sunlight to find, or you're going to have to bring your own light source, which, that ever burning torch, sure, if you've kept it around since your third edition days or whatever. But there's also so many other ideas for light sources. There are many creatures and some types of mosses and things of that nature that are bioluminescent. We have the very common monster that has the little small tiny dot of light hanging in front of it like an aquatic unicorn that draws things towards the light and then it consumes them as it gets closer and such. So we have lots of imagery, and of course we don't have to play with we have a three-dimensional space, so we can definitely have adventures underneath, swimming below, player characters needing to navigate a three-dimensional dungeon of sorts, and of course having guides that lead them to different places. Let's see. Let's go over to ArtStation here, and of course ArtStation has plenty of art here. There's a sci-fi city to the right on this image. Megastructure, undersea habitat with little orbs and such that could attach to different things. Absolutely, we can create some great big bad evil guys with lots of minions, lieutenants and such, paired off with lots of great monsters. I mean, how cool is it to have your merfolk, your undersea hobgoblins? Oh, there's that monster. To the very, very left, we've got the big giant monster, the anglerfish. That's it. I could not remember the name of it. The anglerfish idea with the little light in front of it. But anything that's going to confuse, charm, use illusions and such would be useful in the undersea. Our bad guys having lots of pets, animals, mounts that they use underwater. And then, of course, all of the animals we know of that are aquatic, we take that, turn the volume up. For example, squids that eject out ink, electric eels, any and all monsters that have sonar. I mean, animals that have sonar, sharks that can smell blood and go into a berserk rage because of it. And we could take all of that and use that for our own purposes. And what would an aquatic druid be like? I don't know. Mm, mm, mm. Drew says there is a reason why anglerfish have a light source, right? Right? Maybe it's for their own purposes. And let's remember, dark vision at least in fifth edition isn't as useful as we think. Dark vision in darkness actually gives you a disadvantage. It gives you -5 on your perception checks. That's why monsters and humanoids that have dark vision actually need light, because you really to do fine things like maybe making clothes or writing in documents or whatever the case might be, you're going to need an actual light source. Yeah. Hipsters are trying to turn the water plate into seltzer. Hilarious, but funny, and maybe true. The extreme high pressure is a great risk challenge added into a fight. Ooh, maybe if um, enemies or the PCs are forced to go into, I'm going to use the word down, sink lower, that the higher pressures could cause different things. For example, crushing those potions, or the alchemist that has all the bottles and vials on their belt or something like that. Maybe the high pressure causes the corks to pop. For the glass to shatter or whatever because of the high pressures. Who knows? There's also the pressure that's going to be in the lungs and giving up the air. Uh, Forcing an enemy that's not adapted to this kind of place to force them to dive deeper, or uh, the magic staff of coaquilal is knocked out of the hand of someone, and that staff, that metallic staff, starts to float down, and it gets into a deeper and deeper region, and someone tries to swim after it. How far do you go? Or that same wooden staff could rise towards the surface, and now you've got to swim up to catch it. And the faster you go, you've got the bends. If you want to ignore the pressure in the bends and things like that, there's still the idea that you're going to lose it at the bottom of an ocean, right? Or it may not just sink up and down. If there's a great surge and flow, just releasing something out of your hand could make it flow, in towards the north or towards the west or something, and it just gets sucked into the what's something other than a undertow. It could get pulled into an undertow or whirlpool or something like that. So, or kicking somebody into that water flow could draw them out of the combat and suck them away, and now they have to swim against the flow of the thing. Now, this role playing game, the where hold on, come on, there we go. The role playing game Blue Planet, I believe it's a percentile system, and let's see if we can find books. Welcome to Poseidon 2199. Let's see what books they have for this role playing game. I don't, and actually, it's a perfect time since so many people have left fifth edition and looking for other independent games. Oh, is that I believe that is a image of a killer whale with maybe a weapons harness, shooting something out of the sky, and there's some humans going like, doing a Wilhelm scream, falling into the water. Now that's the cover of the game book that I remember. Archipelago: A Guide to the Islands of the Blue Planet. Access Denied. Blue Planet Player's Guide. Moderator's Guide. I don't know what the difference is between those two. That's cool. Fluid Dynamics. More than just a guide to gear. Fluid Mechanics. Fluid Mechanics. Sorry. Fluid Mechanics presents detailed information on the design and capabilities of your computers, cybernetics, genetic modifications, robots and remotes, cetacean tech, weapons, vehicles, and much more. Now I want to get this. Now I want to buy it. Frontier Justice, a bunch of books. Hells yes. Hmm. I want the physical books, but let's see. Somebody I think likes killer whales. Quick Start Primer, the third edition. Okay, there we go. So there is a third edition of this game. So anyway, let's get back to the underwater realm. Is it really need to head to bed? Have some stuff to do tomorrow. Going to be listening though. Have a great day. You have a great one as well. Thank you very much. All right. So we have come to the end here, but if I can just shotgun some great ideas to use the elemental plane of water again. Using the term lubricant again, it may be a way that other monsters, creatures, treasures, MacGuffins flow into and or out of the elemental plane of water. It may also be a safe place as well. I mean, can you imagine a wizard doing experiments in the deep oceans, in their glass domed city or something like that, well away from humanity and other places to challenge them because it's so difficult to get to an under aquatic realm. Also, much like delving into space, it's not just personal dangers that have an issue, but it's the fact that really, if you're in these aquatic realms, that the whatever you're using to survive in the aquatic realm could be a vector of challenge and danger when enemies are fighting you. Merfolk going like, oh, that starfish you have in your face, we're going to grapple you and rip it off your face so you drown. Those that pouch that has three more uses that you swallow down so you lung breathers, air breathers can breathe. Yeah, we're going to take our trident and try to pop that off of your waist and steal it and swim away with it or something like that. Or strange bedfellows, right? Maybe those merfolk they're pretty dangerous, but they're also the ones who hold I don't know, the plants that have the nectar or the seed that is used for air breathers to breathe underwater, and you're going to have to make a treaty with them or come up with some kind of of uh, temporary treaty or diplomacy just to get to where you need to go, even though you want to murder kill them and they want to kill you. Also, there's the aftermath of having murder hobos in the ocean. Murder killing things could draw enemies. I'm looking at you, giant sharks, boulets that smell blood in the water. Having a fight itself might be very dangerous. Also, the evidence of having those said fights. Sure, killing people on the prime material plane creates just as many problems, but slaughter killing that kraken is going to leave a dead fish in the water, and that's going to spread out and let maybe other tribes or nomads or whatever. And are there nomadic places? Are there areas or regions in the under aquatic realm where you really can't live there? It's like the day of the elemental water. Maybe it's temporary. Okay, guess what? We can all gather here. We're all here to go after the MacGuffins, the person, places, things that are here, but it's temporary because we got to get the hell out of here. Whether it's due to weather changes, temperature changes, migratory dangers. PCs fight one giant kraken and they feel like they're badasses. Come to find out that there's a whole migratory family of dozens, hundreds, thousands of them passing through the plane of water, which would probably be their home world, right? Heck, even the Tarask could be reflavored, reskinned, reused, repurposed to have flippers or be some kind of aquatic lobster or crab or something related to all the above. There may be missions to retrieve the person, place, or get to the thing that the players have to go to. Someone has been kidnapped. A betrothed has been kidnapped, come to find out they wanted to leave in the first place. There may be individuals that walked on land that the story of the mermaid. I want legs and I want to walk on land because I'm in love and I want to adventure, but I have to go back home. Um, Land food, yeah. Sharks think about land food while I think about seafood. Exactly. Hell yeah, exactly. There may be tribes or groups that want to come to the air-filled realms just to kidnap them for any purposes, food, knowledge, what have you. Maybe living in the aquatic realm is so difficult that it's necessary to go to the other elemental planes to get earth, to grow plants, to get air, to fill our air-filled cities, to find materials to burn. Hey, fire needs air, it needs fuel, it needs it needs something to consume and burn. It needs friction. So maybe fire is very rare, not because water flushes it out, but heck, you're living on a plane of water. Where are you going to get dried materials or something to burn or whatnot? And so maybe they want to kidnap pyromancers. They want to capture a fire elemental to use for their purposes. An adventurer that just so happens to be able to summon a sacred flame or produce flame in the palm of their hand. They're like, great, you're staying here for a long time. We need you. Yeah. So absolutely, things that are lost again, dreams, objects that may be lost at the bottom of a great ocean. Maybe those objects, if there's no bottom to the ocean, maybe they just keep falling and the player characters must go after it. And of course, we can't forget our dwarves and gnomes with their submarines and other kinds of aquatic vehicles that the player characters may have access to. Maybe not so useful in a plane of fire, and maybe not so useful down in the nine hells or something like that. But having the use of a little submarine or aquatic vehicle or something like that would be kind of fun to do that. Also, could just be an access point, right? It's the excuse to have the thing so the player characters can use it to have a base of operations. And they're going to want to improve it, make it faster, maybe some more armor, something like that. Or what's the deep diving equipment? Anything from fins to snorkels to the little electric or gas powered. The mantis shrimp Tarask. actually not too far off for something like that, right? What are the movies? The Meg and the Meg 2, dinosaur megalopolis styled monsters. Hell, even dragon turtles and ancient dragons themselves may have been. Um, the ocean may hold so many ancient secrets like dinosaurs that haven't changed over the millennium. So we as fantasy adventurers think um, that the Tarask, that dragons today are what they used to be, but they might be hella dangerous because these, down in the deep oceans, oh, they haven't changed in a millennium. Their DNA, these dragons are less dragon and more Lovecraftian in their size, the madness that they have, and of course, you have to have some Lovecraftian things down there in the dark reaches. Definitely lots of tentacle, um, lots of tentacles, lots of like poisons and things, swarms of anything, swarms of fish and eels and piranhas and such are very good. Drew says fire is a good point. That reminds me that aliens on water planets will probably never develop metalwork since they cannot melt that. Well, I would argue to not ever. I know you're being facetious here. I would argue to never use words like never, always, things like that, because in real life and in fantasy, there might be a one-off. For example, using thermal vents and um, uh, using thermal vents and underwater volcanic activity, it's possible for them to smelt metal. Now, I don't know if it's possible for us to do this in our world, but if you're a merfolk person, maybe it's possible to blow glass because it's hot enough and you've got sand or something. Is it possible to make metal weapons? Is it necessary even to do such a thing? Right? Like, sure, it may be air quotes tribal, but the bones of a dead Tarask might be harder than any kind of alloy or steel. Um, growing Using coral to grow into particular patterns. Um, um, Finding obsidian and onyx underwater. Remember, all geological things are the same. It just so happens that there happens to be water in it. So if you do have earth or access to earth underwater, maybe they're able to get things like that, gemstones. If there's magic of sorts, again, there may be, maybe air bubbles are an anathema to underwater creatures, but creating an air bubble with a forge in the middle of it could be a thing as well. And of course, if they're just as there's crazy adventurers on the prime material plane going to different places to do a thing, the exact same adventurers could come from the plane of water, with their domes filled with water going into the air filled realms and things like that, maybe to bring back or kidnap or steal fire and air and earth and all its permutations to bring back home, and that's how they live. The Viking idea of the cultural idea of Viking culture, many times could come from the um, not geological, the geography of living in a realm that has very few resources to expand an empire, because you're always scrambling for more resources. And so the aquatic realm could very much be that way, where we would love to live here, but to expand we need fire, we need earth, we need metals, we need plant life, we need, how do we have books, how do we find these things? And so it may be a constant need to always leave, go through the rivers, capture things, steal it, destroy it, bring it back home to use. um Excuse me. There may also be a bigger story where the much like the realm of fire expanding, it could also be, what if the aquatic realm is either shrinking or growing, or there's a non-Euclidean need to hold back the aquatic realm because there's always this idea that it's going to spill forth into the other multiverse. And so there may be agents that live there, and the player characters may be involved in it to help them keep, or other dimensional creatures, entities, factions, to keep the water realm where it is, because like a dam, it keeps wanting to blow through and spill into other regions and such. And I could imagine like portals, like small, just a small little portal opening up, maybe no more than a size of a thin pencil, and it's just water just keeps pouring through and pouring through. What is the ever flowing bottle could just be opened into the plane of water and just keeps flowing through. It's like, well, hey, we've got fireballs and lightning bolts. How come no one is a water mage? We very rarely see water mages. And some old ancient person just shaking their head like, we don't have water mages any longer. Why? There was one more water mage and they flooded out 5 continents, and they just could not stop the flow, and we had to kill them to stop it, or something like that, right? They weren't just exiled, we had to murder kill them to stop it. Yeah. When you're a water mage, when you cast a water ball, it happens once. Well, why? Because once you open up the portal to cast a water ball, it just keeps going and going. um, so anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Again, if you've come this far, please like, share, subscribe. If you like what you see, you want to participate, we go live 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on both YouTube and Twitch, and just take part in the show that way. And lastly, on Fridays, I am going back to my Future Fridays, where I kind of just talk through and describe the science fiction setting that I have. It's basically a post-human, transhuman setting in our own solar system, a little bit divergent from, say, an eclipse phase or altered carbon, but along those lines in terms of technology and such. And quite a bit of the way I describe it is that um, a thing isn't what it seems. So tomorrow, just to give you a little bit of a hint, we're going to talk about Terra, the new Earth. It's not brand new; it is Earth, but strangely enough, very most of the population doesn't live on the ground. It lives in the water, it lives in the air, it lives in the atmosphere. The earth, the ground itself, the land itself is a little bit different. So Earth, Terra has actually become, it's kind of a misnomer. It's more like aqua. Um, but anyway, yeah, Terra is, is a mismatch of like post-apocalyptic, but rebuilding and reclaimers, but people living in the oceans. It's also kind of a museum as well, and people leaving the gravity well, going up into space elevators to live and leave the Earth's surface, living in the orbital ring, the massive, completed megastructure that humanity has created before the Great Signal came about. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Drew says, we'll have to watch tomorrow's show a bit later, so I cannot make it live. No problem. And says, if you pay enough taxes to the government, the water realm will stop growing. Yeah, before it floods over top of you, right? So anyway, guys, thank you very much for having a great day. Going a little late here, but that's all right. Guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace.